The evening sun had just begun to set, casting a golden glow over the tall glass windows of a massive corporate building. Inside, the billionaire CEO sat in his office, scrolling through emails and reports on his tablet. His life looked perfect from the outside: luxury cars, fame, and everything money could buy. But deep inside, he carried a quiet loneliness that no one could see. One day, as he was reviewing a charity campaign for his company's foundation, an assistant entered the room and placed a small folder on his desk. "Sir, these are the recent pictures from the orphanage we sponsor," the assistant said softly before walking out. The billionaire nodded without much interest. He'd seen hundreds of such photos before, poor children smiling for the camera, hoping for a better tomorrow. But as he flipped through the pictures, one particular image made him freeze. It was a photo of a little girl sitting on the steps of a small building. Her clothes were torn, her face looked tired, but her eyes looked so familiar. He stared at that picture for a long time, his heartbeat slowing, his breath heavy. Something deep inside him whispered that he had seen those eyes before. He leaned closer, his hand trembling slightly. The child's smile reminded him of someone he used to know, someone he thought he had left behind long ago. He pulled the photo closer, zooming in to look at every detail. Then suddenly his chest tightened. It wasn't just the little girl that caught his attention. Behind her, standing in the shadow, was a woman handing out food. The woman's face was half turned, but it was enough. He felt a wave of shock rush through him. It was her. The woman in the photo was his ex-wife, the one he had once loved more than anything, the one he had walked away from years ago because of pride and misunderstandings. She looked thinner, tired and dressed in simple clothes, nothing like the elegant woman he remembered, but it was her. There was no doubt about it. He couldn't understand what she was doing there in an orphanage, helping poor children. She had once lived a comfortable life with him. How could everything have changed so much? He leaned back in his chair, unable to take his eyes off the photo. Memories came flooding back, their laughter, their dreams, and the painful night when everything ended. He remembered the arguments that had torn them apart. He had chosen his work, his empire, over her. She had wanted a simpler life, one filled with love and family. He had thought success would make him happy. But looking at that photo now, he realized how empty his world had become without her. For a long time, he sat silently in that giant office, staring at the faces of a woman and a girl who suddenly felt like his whole world. The resemblance between him and the child was too strong to ignore. Could it be possible? Was that little girl his daughter? He picked up his phone and called his assistant back in. "Where were these photos taken?" he asked in a low, serious voice. The assistant looked confused. "Sir, those are from a small town near the countryside. The orphanage there is run by a local charity." "Why?" The billionaire didn't answer right away. He just nodded and dismissed the assistant. After the door closed, he turned back to the picture again. His heart felt heavy but also strangely alive. For years he had lived surrounded by luxury but without warmth. That one photo had awakened something inside him, a feeling he thought he had buried forever. He couldn't sleep that night. He sat by his window looking out at the city lights, thinking about her. He wondered what had happened after he left. Did she move on? Did she ever think about him? And who was that little girl? The next morning, before anyone could even ask, he ordered his driver to prepare the car. For the first time in years, he decided to take a break from his meetings and travel quietly, without his usual security or staff. He needed to see for himself. He needed answers. As his car moved along the highway, he looked out the window, his mind filled with memories. He remembered the way she used to smile when she talked about helping others. Maybe she had found peace in doing that. But if that girl really was his child, then he had missed the most important years of her life. His heart ached with regret. He realized how much he had lost, not just a woman he loved, but possibly a family he never knew he had. By the time his car reached the small town, the sun had started to set again, painting the sky orange and pink. He stepped out quietly, holding the picture in his hand. The orphanage stood at the end of a narrow lane. Children played outside, their laughter echoing in the quiet air. And then he saw her, the same woman from the picture standing by the gate, smiling gently at the children. His heart almost stopped. Time seemed to slow down as he took a step closer, unsure of what to say or how to face her after all these years. He didn't know what he would find: forgiveness, anger, or silence. But he knew one thing for sure. That single photo had changed his life forever. The billionaire stood frozen near the orphanage gate, the picture still clutched in his hand. The laughter of children filled the air, but his heart pounded so loudly that it drowned out every other sound. For years he had imagined what it would be like to see her again, but never like this. Never in a place so humble, surrounded by children who had nothing. She looked so different now. Her once glossy hair was tied in a simple braid, her hands busy helping the children carry food trays. There was no makeup, no fancy jewelry, no trace of the life they once shared. Yet there was something about her presence and that same gentle strength, that calmness, and that reminded him exactly why he had fallen in love with her in the first place. He hesitated for a moment, afraid of what might happen next. What if she didn't want to see him? What if she still blamed him for everything? But something stronger than fear pushed him forward. Slowly, he walked through the gate. A few children noticed him first. A tall man in a clean suit and polished shoes. He didn't look like anyone who belonged there. The woman turned around to see what the children were staring at. The moment her eyes met his, everything around them seemed to stop. For a few seconds, they just stared at each other. Two people who had shared a lifetime of love, pain, and silence. Her face turned pale, her hands trembling slightly as she whispered his name softly, almost in disbelief. He stepped closer, unsure of what to say. I didn't mean to just show up like this, he said quietly. I saw this photo and I had to come. He handed her the picture, his voice low, filled with emotion. She took it in her hands, her eyes softening. This girl, she said, looking at the child in the photo. Her name is Alina. She's one of the children I help here. Her mother passed away last year. I've been taking care of her like my own. He swallowed hard, a mix of relief and confusion washing over him. So the girl wasn't hers or his, but the resemblance, the connection he felt, it was something deeper than coincidence. I thought, she looked like someone I used to know, he said quietly. And when I saw you in the background, she smiled faintly, but it wasn't the smile he remembered. It was softer, tired, and full of things she didn't say. It's been a long time, she whispered. I didn't think we'd ever meet again. He looked around at the orphanage and the peeling paint, the old benches, the children playing with worn-out toys, and his heart ached. You've been living here? He asked, struggling to hide the guilt in his voice. She nodded. After we separated, I moved here. I wanted a fresh start. I began volunteering at this place, and eventually, I decided to stay. These children, they gave my life meaning again. He looked at her in disbelief. The woman who had once dined with business elites who had traveled the world with him was now living a simple life among orphans, and she seemed at peace. He couldn't understand it. You had everything, he said softly. Why would you leave it all behind? She looked at him with a faint, sad smile. Because I never wanted everything, she replied. I just wanted you. But you were always too busy building your empire. There was no space left for me. Her words cut deep. He lowered his eyes, remembering all the times he had chosen meetings over dinners, deals over conversations. He had thought he was building a future for both of them, but instead he had built walls that pushed her away. I was wrong, he finally said, his voice heavy with regret. I thought success would fix everything, but it only made me lose the people who mattered most. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The sound of children's laughter filled the silence between them. Then one of the girls ran up to her, tugging gently at her dress. Miss, we need help with the plates, she said. The woman smiled warmly and nodded, excusing herself. He watched as she helped the children, laughing softly, moving with kindness and grace. She didn't need luxury to shine. She had found something far greater than wealth. Later, when the children went inside, she returned to where he stood under the old tree near the gate. Why are you really here? She asked gently. He took a deep breath. Because that photo reminded me of everything I've lost. And I needed to know if there was still a chance to make things right. Her eyes softened, but there was caution in them. You can't change the past, she said. But maybe. You can do something good now. Not for me and for them. She gestured toward the children playing behind her. He nodded slowly, realizing the truth in her words. Maybe he couldn't rewrite their story, but he could start a new one filled with compassion instead of regret. As he prepared to leave, she looked at him one last time. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. "It's good to know you still care." He gave a faint smile. "I never stopped," he whispered before walking away. But as he reached his car, he looked back one more time. The sight of her with the children burned into his heart, and for the first time in years he knew his life was about to change again. He didn't know how yet. But deep down, he felt that this was only the beginning. The billionaire couldn't stop thinking about her after that day. No matter how many meetings he attended or calls he took, his mind kept drifting back to that orphanage, to the woman who once filled his world with warmth and the children who looked at her like she was their only hope. He had returned to his mansion, but it no longer felt like home. The grand hallways were silent, the walls empty. The place that once represented success now felt like a cage. That night, as he sat alone in his massive living room, he took out the same photo again. The picture that had changed everything. The little girl's innocent face, and behind her, the woman who still had the same gentle expression. It made him realize how hollow his achievements truly were. He couldn't just walk away this time. He decided he would do something, not to impress her, but because he genuinely wanted to make things right. The next morning, he called his assistant and asked for the details of the orphanage's funding. To his surprise, the place barely survived on small donations. It was clear they needed help, but he didn't want her to know that he was behind it. So he quietly arranged for an anonymous donation, enough money to repair the building, buy supplies, and fund food for the next few months. He wanted to see her smile, to see the children happy even if she never knew who helped. A week later, he returned to the small town, this time dressed simply. No expensive suit, no chauffeur, no bodyguards. Just a plain shirt, jeans, and a quiet heart. When he arrived, the orphanage looked a little brighter. The walls had been painted, new toys were scattered across the yard, and the children's laughter sounded louder than before. She noticed him the moment he stepped in. Her eyes widened slightly, but this time, she didn't seem angry or surprised. Instead, she gave a soft smile and said, "You came back." He nodded. "I wanted to see how things were going," he said gently. She led him inside. "The children are happier now. Someone made a big donation last week," she said with a hint of wonder. "I don't even know who it was. It's like a miracle." He smiled faintly but said nothing. "Maybe someone who believes in what you're doing," he replied. She looked at him thoughtfully as if she sensed something but didn't ask. Instead, she invited him to stay for lunch. The meal was simple, rice, lentils, and bread, but the warmth around that table felt more genuine than any dinner he'd ever had in his penthouse. The children laughed, teased one another, and shared stories. He watched her smile, the way she comforted a crying child, the way she listened, truly listened when someone spoke. It made him realize that kindness didn't need wealth. It just needed heart. After lunch, one of the younger boys tugged at his sleeve. "Sir, can you play football with us?" he asked with big, hopeful eyes. For a moment, the billionaire hesitated. He hadn't done something so simple in years. But then he laughed softly and nodded. Soon he found himself running across the small field, his expensive shoes covered in dust, laughing like a child again. She stood nearby, watching him with quiet amusement. For the first time in years, she saw him not as the cold, distant businessman, but as the man she had once loved, simple, kind, and human. Later, when the children went inside to rest, they sat under the same old tree again. The breeze was gentle, carrying the scent of fresh flowers. She turned to him. "You look different," she said softly. "Not the man I remember from before." He smiled a little, his eyes thoughtful. "Maybe I'm finally realizing what really matters," he said. "For so long I chased things that never made me happy. But being here, it feels right." She looked away, hiding the emotion in her eyes. "Life teaches us in strange ways," she said. "Sometimes we lose everything to learn what truly matters." He nodded. "Maybe that's what happened to me. I lost you. I lost us." Her eyes softened, but she stayed quiet. The silence between them said more than words ever could. Before he left that day, the children gathered to wave goodbye. One of them handed him a small handmade card. On it, in uneven letters, was written, "Thank you for visiting us. Please come again." He smiled, his heart full. "I will," he promised. As his car drove away, he glanced back through the window. She was still standing by the gate, watching him leave just like before. But this time there was something different in her eyes, not anger, not pain, but a quiet warmth. That night, he couldn't sleep again. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about profits or deals. He was thinking about laughter, kindness, and second chances. He realized he didn't just want to help from afar. He wanted to be part of their world, to fix what he had broken, to bring hope where he once caused hurt. And deep down, he knew this was just the beginning of his journey back, not only to her but also to the man he had always wanted to be. The billionaire began visiting the orphanage more often after that day. At first, he told himself he was only there to help with the charity work, to make sure the children had what they needed. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. Something about that place, those children, and especially her, made him feel alive again. Each visit felt different from his busy city life. There were no board meetings, no deadlines, no endless phone calls. Instead, there was laughter, warmth, and a strange peace that he hadn't felt in years. The children quickly grew comfortable around him, calling him uncle, asking him to join their games, and showing him their little drawings and stories. He would spend hours sitting with them under the big tree, listening to their dreams. Some wanted to become doctors, some teachers, and some simply said they wanted to grow up happy. Their innocence touched him deeply. He realized how much joy he had missed by chasing money and fame. She often watched from a distance, smiling softly as he played with the children, helped fix broken toys, and even taught a few kids how to read. Slowly, the tension between them began to melt away. Their conversations grew more natural, less awkward. They spoke about the past sometimes, but carefully, like people who didn't want to reopen old wounds. One afternoon, while the children were in class, she found him painting one of the old walls of the orphanage. His sleeves were rolled up, his hands covered in blue paint. She laughed quietly. "You?" she teased. "A billionaire painting walls?" He smiled without looking up. "Well," he said, dipping the brush again, "it's strange, but I think this is the first time in years I've actually enjoyed doing something with my hands." She shook her head with a faint smile and joined him, picking up another brush. For a while, they painted side by side, not saying much, just sharing the quiet moment. The sound of the children's voices in the distance and the warmth of the afternoon sun made everything feel peaceful. After finishing, they sat on the steps, wiping the sweat from their foreheads. "You've changed," she said softly after a pause. "You seem gentler now." He looked at her, his voice calm. "Maybe I finally realized what really matters," he replied. "I used to think success meant winning, building something big enough that the world would notice, but none of it meant anything without someone to share it with." Her eyes softened. "You always had a good heart," she said quietly. "You just forgot how to use it for a while." They both laughed, a sound that felt natural, like old times. As days passed, they started spending more time together. He would help her distribute food, repair things around the orphanage, or simply talk in the evenings while the children slept. She told him stories about the kids, how each one had a dream, how they had taught her to appreciate the small things in life. He listened carefully, admiring the strength in her voice. She had been through so much, yet she still gave so much love to others. It humbled him. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset, he turned to her and said, "You've done something incredible here. You've built a family without money or power, just love. That's something I never could." She smiled softly. "Maybe you can now," she said. "You've changed truly. I can see it." There was a long silence after that, filled with memories of what once was and what could have been. He wanted to tell her how much he still cared, how much he regretted losing her, but he didn't, not yet. He was afraid that words might break the fragile peace they had rebuilt. Instead, he showed his care through actions, staying late to help clean, bringing new books for the children, arranging a small medical camp, and fixing broken lights in the courtyard. The children began calling him our hero, and she often laughed at that. But every time she said it, he felt something warm in his heart. One afternoon, heavy rain began pouring down while the children were playing outside. They all rushed under the roof, screaming and laughing. He helped gather them, his shirt completely soaked. She handed him a towel, smiling at his messy hair. "You never used to like getting wet," she said teasingly. He smiled back. "Maybe I needed a little rain to feel alive again," he replied. She laughed softly, and in that moment their eyes met, not with the pain of the past, but with the warmth of something new, something gentle and real. Later that night, after the children had gone to sleep, she stood by the window watching the rain. He came up quietly beside her. "Thank you," he said suddenly. She turned, surprised. "For what?" "For letting me be part of this place," he said. "For giving me a chance to see what real life feels like again." Her eyes softened and she nodded. "People can change," she said. "Sometimes all it takes is the right reason." He looked at her for a moment, his heart heavy with unspoken words. "Maybe that reason was you," he said quietly. She looked away, her eyes shining in the dim light, and didn't respond. But the silence between them said enough. Outside, the rain kept falling, soft and steady, like the slow washing away of years of distance between two hearts that once loved and were slowly learning to love again. The next few weeks passed quietly but beautifully. The billionaire continued visiting the orphanage almost every day. It had become part of his life now, something he looked forward to. He helped with repairs, played with the children, and spent long evenings talking with her under the same old tree. Every moment felt meaningful, as if the years of emptiness in his life were slowly being filled with warmth again. The children adored him. They would run to greet him every time his car pulled up, shouting his name and laughing. They didn't see him as a rich man, just someone who cared. And he loved that. For the first time in years, he felt like he belonged somewhere, not because of his money or title, but because of his heart. One Sunday afternoon, the orphanage hosted a small event for the children. There was music, food, and laughter everywhere. He watched her moving through the crowd, helping the kids dance, her smile glowing brighter than the lights strung across the courtyard. He couldn't take his eyes off her. As the night grew quieter and the children went to sleep, he found her sitting on the steps, watching the stars. The air was cool and the sound of crickets filled the silence. He sat beside her, unsure how to start. After a long pause, he said softly, "You always loved the stars." She smiled faintly without looking at him. "They remind me that no matter how dark the sky gets, there's always some light left," she said. He looked down, his voice trembling slightly. "I spent years chasing things that didn't matter. And in doing so, I lost the one person who did." She turned to him, surprised by his honesty. He took a deep breath and continued, "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I hurt you. But being here, seeing what you've done, how you've kept your kindness, it's made me realize how much I've missed you. How much I still love you." Her eyes widened, and for a moment she didn't say a word. The sound of the wind filled the quiet space between them. He went on, his voice breaking slightly. "I thought success would make me happy, but it only made me lonely. You were the only thing real in my life, and I threw it away because I was too proud to see it. I don't expect you to come back to me, but I needed to tell you that I never stopped loving you." She looked down, blinking away the tears forming in her eyes. "You broke me once," she whispered. "When you walked away, I had to rebuild my life from nothing. I found peace here with these children. I'm afraid to lose it again." He nodded slowly. "I understand," he said gently. "I don't want to take that peace from you. I just want to be part of it, even if that means being here as a friend, helping however I can." His words came from the heart. Simple, sincere, and full of remorse. She stayed silent for a moment, then said softly, "You've changed. The man sitting beside me isn't the same man who left years ago. Maybe time really can heal people." He looked at her, his eyes glistening. "Maybe love can too," he said quietly. A tear rolled down her cheek and she quickly wiped it away. "You always knew how to say the right things," she said, trying to smile. He smiled back gently. "Not always. I'm just finally saying what I should have said a long time ago." The moonlight shone on their faces, soft and peaceful. She took a deep breath and said, "Let's not rush. If you really mean what you said, then show it, not with promises, but with actions. Let's start small for the children, for this place, maybe. We'll see where life takes us from there." He nodded, his heart swelling with quiet relief. "I will," he said. No more words and just actions. Over the next few weeks, he kept that promise. He helped build new classrooms, arranged for better supplies, and even started a small fund in the name of the orphanage. But he did it humbly, never boasting, never trying to buy forgiveness. He simply wanted to help. One evening, the little girl from the first photo, Alina, ran up to him and tugged his hand. "Uncle, come with me," she said cheerfully. She led him to the garden where the woman stood, waiting with a warm smile. The setting sun painted the sky in soft orange and gold. She looked at him quietly and said, "I've seen your actions and I can see your heart. Maybe it's time we both stop living in the past." He stepped closer, his voice soft. "Does that mean?" She nodded gently. "It means I forgive you," she said. "And maybe we can start again." He couldn't speak for a moment. His eyes filled with tears, tears of relief, gratitude, and love. He reached out and took her hand, holding it as if it were the most fragile thing in the world. They stood there silently, watching the children play in the golden light. There were no grand speeches, no dramatic gestures, just two people who had finally found their way back to each other after years of pain and distance. The same photo that once broke his heart had brought him back to where he truly belonged, not to wealth or fame, but to love, forgiveness, and peace. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of hope, he realized that sometimes life gives you a second chance, not to rewrite the past, but to start a new chapter with a wiser heart.